Welcome back to Haunt Narratives. Tonight, we're going to be taking a look at something really terrifying. We're going to be diving into the world of 28 Days Later. You know that fictional outbreak that makes you double-check your locks and, like, side-eye your neighbors?
It's interesting because it's not just your run-of-the-mill zombie flick. It's what makes it so terrifying is the realism. It doesn't rely on supernatural elements or jump scares. It's tapping into something much more primal, that fear of a pandemic. And it's really amplified by this virus, the way this virus works.
All right.
It's just incredibly contagious.
So let's talk about this rage virus, right? It's a highly contagious, blood-borne pathogen. It doesn't just make you sick. It completely hijacks your brain. You become this embodiment of pure rage. And the terrifying thing is the speed. Forget days or hours, we're talking seconds. One drop of blood, a single bite, and you're one of them.
Imagine the chaos, right? But the film doesn't show us the initial outbreak. It drops us right into the aftermath, 28 days. And that's where the film's mastery of atmosphere comes in. It's not just the empty streets, the overturned buses, the abandoned belongings. It's the silence, the absence of the familiar hum of city life.
It's like the world took a deep breath and held it, waiting for something terrible to happen. And that's what we get when we meet Jim. Our protagonist wakes up from a coma in this deserted London hospital. You feel that tension immediately.
Yeah, and the film doesn't waste time explaining. He stumbles out of the hospital, and the visuals alone tell you everything you need to know. He's alone, completely disoriented. It's a world that no longer makes sense. Imagine waking up to that utter silence. A ghost town, no one.
Oh, talk about waking up on the wrong side of the bed. But the eerie silence is shattered soon enough when Jim encounters the infected. This is where the film's depiction of a pandemic goes from unsettling to downright terrifying.
And these aren't your slow, lumbering zombies, fueled by pure rage. They're fast, relentless, and they're driven by the single-minded hunger to infect. And the film just does a fantastic job of conveying the sheer terror of being hunted by something so primal, so devoid of human reasoning.
And just when you think things can't get any worse for Jim, he is rescued by two survivors, Selena and Mark, who have adapted to this horrifying new world. But their methods of survival are brutal. They really show how far humanity has fallen in the face of this catastrophe.
Think about it. They're scavenging for food, constantly on the move, living with that knowledge that anyone at any moment could turn. There's no room for sentimentality or for weakness.
And the film drives this point home with a scene that's so heartbreaking and terrifying. Marky sustains this seemingly minor wound, but it's enough. It's enough to expose him to infected blood.
Yeah, and Selena, hardened by what she's experienced, she makes a split-second decision, revealing the brutal reality of their situation. She kills Mark before he can turn. A chilling reminder of the choices people might be forced to make when facing these extreme circumstances.
A gut-wrenching moment. Shows how quickly the rules of civilization can crumble when survival is at stake. You're left wondering, would I be able to do the same thing? Could you sacrifice someone you care about to protect yourself, to ensure your own survival?
It's a question that lingers as they continue their journey, clinging to the hope of finding a safe haven. They hear about this military blockade in Manchester, promising protection, order. For a moment, it seems like there's a glimmer of hope, a sign that maybe, just maybe, there's some semblance of civilization left.
But as we'll see in the next part of our deep dive, the promise of safety at the blockade is a dangerous illusion. It leads to a terrifying confrontation with the darkness that lurks not just in the infected, but within humanity itself. Welcome back to Haunt Narratives. Last time we left off, Jim, Selena, and Mark were heading towards this supposed safe haven, a military blockade in Manchester. But, you know, like any good horror story, things are never what they seem.
Right. Remember how we talked about the film tapping into our primal fears? Well, the blockade is a perfect example of that. Like, on the surface, it offers everything you'd create in this apocalyptic scenario. Security, order, a sense of community. But that allure, that desperate need for safety, it kind of blinds you to the danger lurking beneath the surface.
And the danger isn't just from the infected, right? It's from other humans, those who have managed to cling to some semblance of power in this completely chaotic world.
Exactly. And that brings us to Major Henry West, the leader of the blockade. Initially, he seems like this beacon of hope, someone who's managed to restore order in all this chaos. But as the story unfolds, you realize that West's motives are anything but altruistic.
He's using this promise of safety, right, to lure in survivors, especially women, to the blockade, all for his own twisted purposes. This is where 28 Days Later really dives into the dark side of human nature. It's not just about surviving the virus anymore. It's about surviving the monsters we become when society's rules no longer apply.
Yeah, think about it. In a world stripped bare where the only law is survival, basic human decency can become a liability.
Right.
West, he exploits that vulnerability. He preys on those who are desperate, right? For protection, for that sense of belonging. He twists that basic human need into a tool for power and control.
It's a chilling reflection of how easily power corrupts and how quickly civilization can just peel away and reveal that darkness underneath. And honestly, it's something that resonates so deeply, even in our world.
This is what gets under your skin and makes you ask, who are the real monsters here? Is it the infected, driven by this primal instinct? Or those who exploit their fellow humans just for their own gain?
It's a scary thought. And Jim, our protagonist, who at first represented that flicker of humanity amidst all the brutality, is now forced to confront this darkness head-on. He sees through West's facade, realizing the danger of this so-called sanctuary, and tries to escape with Selena and another survivor, Hannah.
And this is where things get really tense. Jim's attempt to escape, him defying West's authority, is met with violence, with a death sentence. It's this reminder that even the smallest act of rebellion can have deadly consequences in this world.
Yeah, but Jim's escape, even as desperate and chaotic as it is, highlights another key aspect of this film: the unpredictability of this world. Just when it seems like all hope is lost, this chaotic chain of events, fueled by the very virus they're trying to escape, turns the tide.
Remember Private Mailer, the infected soldier?
Oh, right.
His presence at the blockade, it isn't just a terrifying reminder of the threat of the virus. He becomes this unwitting weapon, this force of chaos that unleashes havoc and creates an opportunity for Jim, Selena, and Hannah to break free.
Oh, the irony. The very thing they're trying to escape becomes their unlikely savior. But their escape is far from a clean break. They're still being hunted, pursued by West, who reveals his true ruthlessness in a scene that's both heart-stopping and horrifying.
It's this really tense, claustrophobic sequence in the car, and just when it seems like they might actually get away, West shoots Jim, leaving you wondering if anyone can survive this nightmare.
It's awful. It's a total gut punch. But then the film throws another twist, a moment of poetic justice.
Hannah, young but fierce, she acts purely on instinct, puts the car in reverse, and it leads to West's pretty gruesome demise at the hands of the infected. It's visceral, shocking, but there's this sense of relief, like some karmic balance is restored.
Right. It's this reminder that even in the darkest of times, even when the rules have been rewritten, there are still consequences for those who prey on the vulnerable, for those who exploit chaos for their own gain.
It also shows the resilience of the human spirit, the will to survive, even when faced with unimaginable horrors. Jim, even though he was wounded, survives. He finds refuge with Selena and Hannah in this remote cottage, away from the chaos and corruption of the blockade.
But that begs the question. In this world where the line between human and monster is so blurred, what becomes of them? How do you even begin to rebuild a life, a sense of hope, when everything has been shattered? That's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. We'll examine the film's ending and the lingering questions it leaves us with. Welcome back to Haunt Narratives. We've gone through this horrifying world of 28 days later. We've seen society collapse, faced the darkness inside the infected and even within humanity. Now we're at the end, the final part of our deep dive. Let's explore how the film uses visuals and sound to really amplify the horror and leaves us with these questions about survival and hope, the future of humanity.
What really sets this film apart from other zombie movies is its commitment to being real. Not just the story, but how it's presented. It doesn't use cheap jump scares. It just creates this feeling of dread. It gets under your skin. It stays with you long after it's over.
Yeah, it really does. It's like the world's holding its breath, waiting for the next horrible thing to happen.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has to do with the visuals, right?
Oh, absolutely. Right from the beginning, 28 Days Later establishes this feeling of desolation. Remember that shot of Jim just walking through London, completely deserted?
Yeah.
Those long shots of empty streets, landmarks with no life. It's a powerful use of negative space.
You expect to see the crowds, the traffic, the normal city, but there's nothing. It's eerie, it's silent, you just know something is wrong.
It taps into that fear of being alone, of being abandoned in a world you don't recognize anymore. And then the colors in the film make it even worse. Muted tones, grays and blues, this washed out look. It's like all the color, all the life is gone.
Yeah, it's like a visual representation of how they feel. The characters, hopeless, struggling in this dark reality. And it's not just what you see. The sound is a big part of that dread, too.
The film uses silence, but it's almost deafening. No everyday sounds, the traffic, people, music. It's oppressive, it's tense, and then when you do hear something, it's jarring, sudden, incredibly effective.
Like those screams from the infected.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just growling, it's blood-curdling, full of rage and pain.
And how they use these sudden noises. Footsteps, glass breaking. Keeps you on edge. You're always waiting for the next threat.
You're right, always on edge. And even the music. It's not your typical horror movie sound.
No. More atmospheric, melancholy even. It's not just there for the action. It reflects how heavy the story is, what the characters have lost, what they're dealing with. But then there's hope, too. You hear that in the music, like that track in the house in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
It's driving, pulsating, captures the energy of the infected and that desperate fight for survival.
It's iconic. You hear it and you know.
Yeah.
And it really builds tension. You feel the urgency of their situation. But it's really the ending that stays with you. After all that horror, the violence, we're left with this image of Jim, Selena, and Hannah in a cottage. They're signaling that they're there with this hello banner.
It's powerful. Hope, resilience, coming out of all that darkness. They went through hell, but they didn't give up. They're still fighting for a future, even if they don't know what it holds.
Right. And that last shot, the jet seeing their banner, a little light in this world, consumed by darkness. But it's not a happy ending, is it?
No. It's open-ended. Leaves you with more questions than answers. Can we really rebuild after something like that? Will they ever really heal from what they've been through?
These are the questions that stay with you after the film ends. Make you think about humanity, how fragile civilization is. But also, that hope remains.
28 Days Later is a film that sticks with you. This chilling reminder that we're vulnerable and darkness is there, even in the most ordinary places.
Well, that's it. Our look into the world of 28 Days Later. We talked about the rage virus, society falling apart, the visuals and sound that make it such a horrifying masterpiece.
But this doesn't have to end here. Tell us what you think. What stuck with you? What questions are you left with? Let us know in the comments and we can keep talking about it.
And if you liked exploring 28 Days Later, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment. We'll be back soon with another Haunt Narratives. We'll be digging into more of horror cinema. Until then, sleep tight, if you dare.